Hello and welcome to Cancelled Movie Report, the documentary podcast series that talks about the best movies that Hollywood never made. My name is Michael Campbell, but you can call me Cambo. And joining me, as always, is actor, comedian, and certified pop culture titan, Mr. Eden Porter.
Thank you very much for having me, Cambo.
Now, we have a very special guest this week, Eden. If you are a pop culture titan, perhaps he is a comedy titan, you might know him from his movie podcast, Zach and Mish's Leguizamo Rama. Well, it's very possible you know him from his hugely successful comedy group, Aunty Donna. Zachary Ruane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great that you put Leguizamo Rama above Aunty Donna. That really stroked my ego. That's a podcast where I'm watching every single film starring the character actor John Leguizamo. Surprisingly, hasn't cut through the same way that Aunty Donna has.
Now, Zach, you are a huge movie fan. You host monthly screenings at the Lido Cinema here in Melbourne. Do you have an interest in these kind of weird movies that never made it?
Yeah, I do, and I love the romanticising of them. I remember I used to read Empire magazine when I was a teenager, and I remember they did this article once about all these movies that were in the minds of the filmmakers that never got made. And what's really interesting is that a few of them have since gotten made. And I remember reading about Avatar when it was before Titanic. James Cameron had this idea, and it was so mind-bendingly like different to our world that he couldn't do it without, like, the special effects didn't exist. I was like, what world could this be? And it turns out it was just like Hawaii but with blue people. It's like, man, you could have shot that on location, dude.
Yeah. I like the idea that what we hope to do here is take that romanticized idea and make people go, oh, okay, yeah. That's
Well,
what it would have been.
it's a reality train that just hits it in the face because so many of these people are like, oh, in concept it sounded really cool, and then you listen to it, you're like, oh yeah, it's really not as good as we originally thought.
Well, this one is not one of the Superman Lives, and it's not one of the Justice League Mortals. This is a one that was requested for us to cover by Michael Rocco and Jacka Gray. Both requested this. Full disclosure, I was not aware of this project at all. But this week we're going to go back to the 1980s, and we're going to be talking about a movie called John Carpenter's Shadow Company. So let's get into it. What happens when the creative minds behind Lethal Weapon and the Monster Squad team up for a horror action movie? What kind of story would lure iconic film producers and directors to both join the project? And which legendary actor would set to face off against an army of vengeful undead soldiers?
Wow, what a hooky intro. I would love it if those were just legitimate questions.
Yeah.
Like, what would happen? And that's the whole podcast. What do you reckon?
But putting that aside, let's talk about this movie.
I haven't prepared anything. What do you reckon, guys?
So here's the thing. We are deep in the 80s here, so I think we need to get a little bit of dirty saxophone coming to kind of set the mood. The year is 1987 that we find ourselves here. And Shane Black is having a hell of a year this year. He has written the smash hit Lethal Weapon. He's also done some punch-up writing and appeared in the classic action film Predator. And at the same time, in the same year, he's helping his friend and former roommate Fred Decker put the finishing touches on the Monster Squad. Now, have you guys seen the Monster Squad? It's kind of a forgotten movie these days, but it was essentially the Dark Universe before the Dark Universe tried to do it. All of the classic movie monsters coming together.
This is, I feel a lot of shame here. I know I've not seen the Monster Squad.
Cambo, is the you've heard that famous thing about Shane Black writing Lethal Weapon and how there's a stage direction describing the mansion in it?
Yes.
And it says, oh, this is mansion on top of the Hollywood Hills. It's really good. It's the kind of place that I'll be able to afford if this script gets picked up and made into a film. It's like in the script. So good.
Yeah, Shane Black was known for putting things in his scripts to impress script readers. Because he's like, you got to get past the script reader before it gets to a producer. So he puts a bunch of jokes in that are not like people will not ever see them except for the script reader, like
That's
that one.
great, though. I
Just
love
to get
that.
them past.
So good.
He also, I remember hearing once about his process whenever he does a big studio film is to take as many big swings as humanly possible in the script, so that because he knows that they're not gonna kill everything with notes.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have any like system. He just goes, I'm gonna have a big swing in every single scene. So when they'll kill about 70% of it, and that's where like I think that explains Iron Man 3 a lot. There's just like big swings somewhere sometimes. Like,
Yeah, what if he's just, I don't know, he's a soccer hooligan and he's jumping around and he's having
Like-
threesomes.
we'll let you keep the soccer hooligan threesomes, but you got to cut this up. Like, I would love to know what they made him cut, you know?
Yeah. So here's why you may have never heard of Monster Squad, because it was a huge bomb when it came out. So Monster Squad underperformed at the box office and was met with somewhat mixed reviews. But Shane Black and Fred Decker, they wanted to work again together and they wanted to do another horror action film. So they wanted to stay in that genre. And they were disappointed. They think the reason that the Monster Squad failed was because of the PG-13 rating that they were forced to use.
I thought you were going to say more monsters. They needed more monsters, Kembo. Just more. Just
Monsters.
more.
A squad isn't big enough. We need a company, an entire company of monsters. And they saw the success of The Lost Boys, which was an R-rated horror film compared to the Monster Squad. So they said, all right, let's do it again and let's do a hard R action horror film. And then this resulted in a screenplay called Shadow Company.
Okay.
And this is a story set around something that the 80s were kind of fascinated in, which is the Vietnam War.
Wow.
I feel like that's when you start getting your, Apocalypse Now and Platoon and all these movies where it was just long enough away from the Vietnam War where they're like, hey, wait a minute.
Remember that?
Yeah, that was kind of messed up.
What were we doing 10 years ago? Yeah.
But I feel like 80s, you're absolutely right. It was far enough away to start like exploring it in film. I don't feel like it's far enough away to start exploring it with monsters.
So this
more
Shadow
2000s territory.
Shadow Company is a story of Vietnam soldiers returning from the dead and seeking revenge.
Oh, I like that.
So
Far
this
out.
is the whole script is kind of puckered with commentary about how America treated their soldiers in the Vietnam War, and it's very much that 80s lens where a lot of those movies were like, hey, this maybe that was unethical what we were doing out there all that time.
Oh, there's subtext here, Cambo. I thought this was just a
subtext.
monster movie. No, this is high art.
Just a monster movie, please, Eden, not on our
sorry.
show. So this, I would say Shane Black already kind of an iconic 80s screenwriter, and Fred Decker kind of a cult filmmaker from the 80s. But this is where it hits another 80s icon because it grabbed the attention of a producer called Walter Hill. Are you guys familiar with the work of Walter Hill?
Walter Hill. The name's familiar.
So he produced most of the 80s films that have become cult classics. The Warriors, Aliens. He is very much the big 80s action guy.
I'm looking up. You forgot to mention Brewster's Millions.
Yes, yeah.
48 Hours. The Warriors, the drama.
But they're like, you've got your Don Simpsons, your Jerry Bruckheimers, and your Walter Hill. Walter Hill is of that ilk.
oh, dude,
wow.
he did Red Heat as well.
Oh,
Red
did
Heat.
he?
Red Heat, famously, Belushi, Schwarzenegger, finally in the same film. So good.
The 80s were a different time, man.
I know. And just like fuel, I think was it Don Simpson that quite literally had his like heart explode through cocaine overdose
I think so,
in the 80s.
Amazing.
Which, like, he's producing Top Gun and stuff. He seems like the kind of guy that would just be an absolute cocaine fiend in the 80s. So this script made its way to Walter Hill, and Walter Hill loved it. And he said, I got a friend of mine who I think will be perfect to direct it. And obviously, maybe we've given this away with the title, but he went to John Carpenter.
Wow.
So this is John Carpenter in the mid to late 80s. This is like peak John Carpenter. And to put it exactly where we are, he at this time is finishing production on They Live.
Right.
Great.
So script was in 87. This is now, we're pushing into 88 now.
Yeah,
so he's
They Live,
finishing They Live.
Where's Escape from New York in that?
That's 81. That's
Yeah,
Escape from
right.
New York
That's
start.
earlier than
yeah,
I
that's
thought.
start. Escape from New York start.
I always thought it was more like mid to late. There you go.
Maybe
God,
you're
he's
thinking
good.
of Escape from LA.
From LA, yeah, with the surfing, CGI surfing.
The better of the two Escape films.
Yeah. Less effective as a prison. It's just like, let's also... It's not that hard to escape from the flat, open expanses of LA. Just get out of there.
Here are all the 80s icons we have so far put together in a monster squad type team. We've got Shane Black, Fred Decker, Walter Hill, and John Carpenter. But there is obviously the hunky lead in Shadow Company. They had to go to an actor to try and find the all-American guy. Now, I thought I'd throw it out to you guys. Who would you guess is the all-American guy of an 80s action horror film?
Well, that's tough, isn't it?
Is it Kurt? Is it Kurt Russell?
It was Kurt Russell.
Oh, it was.
Kurt Russell signed on to be the lead of Shadow Company. And they were going to start production as soon as They Live was released. John Carpenter could then pivot and start working on Shadow Company.
This legitimately sounds like the best fucking movie ever. Like,
I
this
know.
there's nothing about this that...
Sometimes we find this where you get these movies that have an insane lineup of people. At the Mountains of Madness, a Guillermo del Toro movie was a bit like this, where it's just an insane lineup of people that you're like, why isn't this bigger news?
Yeah.
We have the screenplay for Shadow Company, and we're about to break it down to find out what the hell the story of Shadow Company was and whether it would have made a great movie or not. But before we get into it, Eden, there's a sound that you will be familiar with. This might be new to you, Zach, but I am obliged to play this. What does that signify, Eden?
That signifies I have no memory of that. I remember the bell, Kempo. What's the alarm?
That is a spooky warning.
Oh, that's a spooky warning from
spooky
Mountains of
warning.
Madness.
Because this is a spooky film that we're about to get into here.
It's a spooky warning.
Sorry, I do get spooked, so I might have to head
Log off.
See you later. Thanks for having me. Come to my Lido screening. See you around.
If you guys are ready, I will take you through the story of Shadow Company. So the story starts with a black screen and a biblical quote from Luke 6:8. And the sins of the fathers shall be visited upon the sons and the daughters. That's the quote that we're starting.
Fuck, that's a sick opening line.
That's good. That's good.
The biblical quote at the start of a movie generally means there's about to be some shit.
Yeah. John, Stone Cold 3:16.
Yeah,
Stone
yeah.
Cold said so. All the big biblical quotes. Yeah, good.
So we are hit straight away with a needle drop, and it's in the Vietnam War. What musician do you think they would use to signify the Vietnam War in a movie?
Sympathy for the Devil, Rolling Stones.
Oh, you're close. That is another classic. Eden, have you got any?
War, what is it good for?
Oh, no. It's Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, good.
But it's not Fortunate Son, which is the classic that they always go to. It starts with Run Through the Jungle by Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Is John Carpenter not doing his own...
He's
wow,
scores.
wow.
Scores kind of synth-laden scores.
Yes, he's not doing that. Okay.
Well, you got to have one needle drop to let people know it's the Vietnam War.
Okay.
They would have negotiated. It would have been a Shane Black at one end of the table, Carpenter at the other end of the table, negotiating scene by scene if it was needle drop or bow, 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 bow.
So this song transitions to Saigon in 1973. The city is chaotic. It's filled with American GIs, Vietnamese refugees, and it's the aftermath of the war. The war has just finished.
This is sick. This is the best movie I've ever heard in my life. I'm so sorry to be so uncritical of it. Fuck, man.
We now meet Colonel Frank Nico, who emerges, and he is described as a hardened officer with a cigarette dangling from his lips.
Are we talking Samuel L. Jackson, Jurassic Park, like hanging
No
off
cigarette
the
is
lip?
dangled as much as that.
No, yeah, correct.
That's
correct
too far.
answer. Correct answer.
He eyes a dingy dive bar across the street called Torchy's, and it looks quite dangerous and intriguing, and he makes his way through. It says that he walks past several prostitutes on his way through. Inside Torchy's, it's kind of thick with smoke and air and a lot of soldiers drinking, and he puts a wad of cash on the bar, and he kind of buys his way into a secret backroom poker game that's going on. and he gets led through to the back room. Once he's there, Nico finds a group of 6 American commandos, and they're playing a high-stakes game of poker in a dingy room. And these men, they've all got black berets, and they've all got the same tattoo, which is a serpent wrapped around a dagger. And there's a real menacing aura happening in this back room, because they're gambling with not just money. They're putting down life insurance policies, they're putting down medals they won in the war, and one guy even bets his own finger and just chops it off right there on the spot, puts it into the pot.
Wow.
What?
And Nico, he is confused. He's like, oh my God, this is what's... So he tries to start playing this game with them, and they don't want anything to do with him. And he starts arcing up a bit, trying to be a big man. And the leader of this group of men grabs him, breaks his arm, stabs him in the chest, and then they all get up as the leader says, "Get up, men, it's time." And they all leave the dingy bar.
What is going on here?
I mean, essentially, we're just setting up absolute badasses here.
Yeah, my God.
This group now goes to
To
an
be at the
airfield.
hypothetical 1988 out of competition Cannes screening of this would have been...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's
Something
only so much game you can play if you're chopping off fingers to
Yeah.
up the ante. That's wild. That is.
That's
wild.
why they had to end their game.
Yeah, well,
They're like,
yeah,
if you got to
not
go
enough
that
fingers.
far, we may as well call it.
That's.
Get up, man. Time to
This
go.
is quite a starting. I can't remember a poker game with as big a stakes within the first 2 minutes of a movie.
I love that it's a bit of a fake out. They make you think that Colonel Frank Nico was going to be a bit of a badass. Maybe he's Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
but he gets killed immediately by these guys just for arcing up and trying to join their poker game. The guy just stabs him. And
It would be
leaves him to
great if
die.
they did kill Kurt Russell in the first minute
Yeah,
of the
that'd be
film.
great. wouldn't
What is that, executive decision?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's very
yeah, yeah.
executive decision.
This scene now shifts to an airfield at dawn, and there's a Huey helicopter sit ready, and we meet Major Garrett Stark. He's addressing these 6 commandos that we saw in Torchies. I'm going to run through the commandos' names. Don't worry, you don't need to remember all of them. I will remind you of those that you need to know. But we have, I love whenever you get a group of soldiers, the names that they come
Yeah,
with.
there's often.
Armbruster, Stockton, Perez, Noonan, Kazali, and McCall. These are the
How
6
many
soldiers.
characters are there? 6. That's
6.
so. That would have been so hard for them to pick the 5 names other than Perez.
Yes.
There's always a Perez, so we know there's a Perez.
Yeah, Perez, Rodriguez. There's always. Yeah.
I'll say the one you guys are going to need to remember is Stockton.
I felt
Stockton will be an
Stockton. I
important
felt
character
Stockton. I felt Stockton.
And to a lesser extent, McCall. So this is a motley crew. They've each got kind of their own distinct thing, which is the classic group of soldiers. They've each kind of trained in a different skill. And Stark briefs them on their mission, which is a covert operation into Cambodia under the cover of a ceasefire agreement that officially does not exist. And these men, he tells them that you're no longer ordinary soldiers. They're now instruments of war, and they've been purged of their fear and their pity and their conscience.
As opposed to all those other soldiers where they let them keep all those
Oh
qualities.
yeah, they're so well balanced. Yeah, exactly.
You know how good they are at training. There's never been any movies that have shown that can be a little problematic.
So as the helicopter takes off, we now see another shadowy figure. He's been watching the whole time. This is Colonel Philip Woodhurst, and he watches the chopper disappear into the dawn sky. And then we cut to a title sequence. So this is just a setup for the movie, and this is the titular shadow company that we've just met.
It feels like the.
I will tell you, Kurt Russell has not appeared yet.
Okay, that's good. I feel like whenever
not one
you
of
have a group of shadowy figures, and then there's another shadowy figure watching that shadowy figure,
Yeah.
then you need to go out again, and there's another shadowy figure. This is you can see why they went with shadow.
It's like that meme template with the people holding
Yes,
guns
no,
to
yeah,
each other
yeah,
that keeps
exactly.
zooming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be in the opening sequence, and we've already got shadowy figures following shadowy figures. That took like 3 seasons of X-Files before we got that deep into shadowy figures.
I mean, they're not fucking around with the word shadow in shadow.
No. This is that is like the coolest opening. I have a big love of films where when you hear the elevator pitch, the sort of film where you go, well, I know how that would open, and then to not open there. Like, I would have thought that would have either opened like in the 87 or in a battle, but to open at the end of the war, far out. This
Secret
is so
agreement
intriguing.
that does technically not exist going on.
Yeah.
There's some real backhanded politics.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm liking it.
So we now cut to title card 16 years later, and we're in a little small American town. This is a Shane Black script. What season is it in the town?
Oh, it's winter.
What more specifically?
Christmas time.
Christmas time.
He loves Christmas. He loves Christmas.
Yeah. Every Shane Black movie always has some kind of Christmas element, and this movie is set at Christmas. So we see a bustling city during the Christmas season. We see a one-legged Santa Claus outside a tiny little diner, and he's collecting donations for Vietnam veterans. And it's here we meet a man named Jake Pollard. Now, this is a man that you will recognize as being Kurt Russell.
Okay, good.
He seems rugged and lonely, and he donates to Santa's cause as he enters the small little diner, and there's a little kid running around with a toy gun, and this is where we hear our first scene.
What can I do for you?
How much is the grilled cheese sandwich?
$1.50.
Coffee. Black.
You got it.
How's it going, Slick? What you got? Uzi? I don't want to say anything, but looks to me like you got it on full automatic. I mean, at this range, you waste an awful lot of ammo. Tell you what. Now you're on semi. Hey, no charge.
Nice. You gonna teach him to kill people next? Why don't you throw those tags away? The war's over. We lost. Remember?
It's Christmas. How about a little peace on Earth?
Whatever you say, soldier. Or should I say, baby killer?
No. You shouldn't.
Pollard notices the TV, playing a news report.
The bodies of the 6 American MIAs, sealed in this impregnable temple for 16 years, were found this week by a group of self-styled mercenaries from Tacoma, Washington. Members of the group refused to be interviewed for this report, but their leader did volunteer this quote, "We just did what any American would do. We brought our boys home." This is Bob Cochran, in northern Kampuchea.
Get your refill, hun? Hun?
The names of those soldiers will be revealed at a press conference tomorrow in Merritt, California, where the dead will be honored in a military funeral at the National Veterans Cemetery, located near the grounds of the William Westmoreland Army Base in Merritt.
So this is where the story proper starts to take place.
Okay.
Jake Pollard has heard that they have found 6 soldiers that went missing 16 years ago, their bodies in a temple.
And so this is
And now
16,
he's
this
just
is-
had to go.
This is 16 years later after that. Coincidence, Cambo?
Yeah, big one.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Really big coincidence.
How are we feeling about the vibe of it?
Man, I've been so uncritical from the start, and keep me in that position. I love this movie so much. I know I would love it. I can't, unless it all falls apart. This is such a good idea for a film.
Okay, so Cambo, so let's just they've found 6 dead Americans in a sealed tomb. Did they say
Impregnable tomb.
Impregnable tomb. And now other Marines went and got them and have now brought them back, and they're going to.
They're bringing them back to America, to Merritt, California, which is where this is set.
And is it was Kurt Russell's character the one that when the guy was like the war's over, was that to Kurt Russell's character?
That was to Kurt Russell.
So
Yes. That was to Jake Pollard. Yes. So it very much has the vibe of everyone at the moment. They don't respect.
Yeah, they're spitting
Vietnam
on the
veterans.
vets. They're being like,
They're
"Fuck
spitting,
you guys." Yeah.
yes.
So it sets
That's
that
what
up
the
quite
80s
nicely.
was all about.
Yeah.
The 80s was
exactly.
all about reappraising the soldiers and also saying, hey, it was a terrible war, but kind of cool.
Good music, good soundtrack.
Great.
Everyone was kind of pretty cool.
Yeah. The aesthetic was great.
Yeah.
Palm trees? Are you
Jungle
kidding me?
aesthetic. Good soundtrack.
Yeah. But so we very much get the sense that Kurt Russell's Jake Pollard has a military background. He's wearing dog tags.
Yep.
But he seems to know something's going on here. He seems to know about these 6 soldiers, and it's freaked him out, and he's left to head to Merritt, California. And specifically, we find out he's going to look up someone called Sylvia Traeger. So it's an old acquaintance of his, and he looks her up in the phone directory.
I was going to say it's the phone directory and going down the list and then pointing to the name, yeah?
Oh, yeah. And not to spoil too much, but we've got a phone booth coming up as well.
Of course. Yeah, great. Great.
So we now cut to a Westmoreland Army base in Merritt, California, and preparations are underway for a military funeral, and the bodies of the 6 MIAs have been returned home. And we see General Woodhurst, who was there at the opening scene. He's now older and he's grayer, and he's overseeing this operation.
Kemba, can I just ask, these 6 guys, they're definitely dead, and there's nothing that could change that, correct?
They were in an impregnable tomb.
Yeah, so they're dead.
Eden.
So they're
They're
dead.
pretty
Okay,
dead.
Good. Okay, good. I just wanted to establish that straight off the bat.
And dead is dead.
Yeah,
Okay.
in my book, dead is dead.
Okay.
As far as I know, in the history of the world, no one's ever come back from the dead. Eden.
Okay, good.
Please, just use your head. So Woodhurst is now the dead of the night in a sterile storeroom. And Woodhurst, he's performing this grim ritual. He's got like a hood and a visor on, and he sprays the bodies with a mysterious mist. And he's kind of talking to them with this twisted sense of affection and appreciation for what they've done. He's saying, no one treated you right. No one understood what you were going. And he's spraying them with this weird mist. And then he kind of sits there with the lifeless bodies for a little bit. And he starts to reminisce himself about the war and the camaraderie and the betrayal that they all felt when their mission was suddenly pulled out from under them. And he tells them that he will help these soldiers get the revenge for people that don't appreciate what they've done.
Wow.
And as the chemical mist envelops their bodies, there's a strange energy fills the room. And once the ritual is complete, he leaves and he walks out of the room. Oh. So he's been doing something to these bodies.
So hang on, are we leaning at this point? Is this you said he's in like a cloak and doing a ritual, but you also said he's spraying chemicals. So are we doing is this arcane magic or is this scientific?
Well, he's wearing a hood, but it says he's wearing a mask.
Okay.
So I picture it like a ventilator.
So
mask.
it's not. So it's more science based than.
Yes.
Okay.
But like fake science. You can't bring back fake science, yeah.
I just want to check. Zach's starting to sweat. What's that behind you?
I'm getting a bit spooked. Lucky we had that warning.
Essentially, the idea is that he feels that these guys, they were betrayed by their country.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to help you. So the next day, Jake Pollard, he arrives in Merritt. And he learns that the bodies of the MIAs are going to be honored in a funeral ceremony. And among the mourners at this funeral ceremony, we meet Doris Stockton and her children, Heather and Kim. And Heather Stockton is going to become a main character in this. That is the daughter of one of the MIA soldiers that has been returned. Heather is described as, and of course she is, a pretty teenager. Stands with her family. She's kind of struggling to recognize this loss. And she goes and puts something on her father's coffin, and we see a little metallic bracelet that she's wearing, which actually has her father's name, rank, and serial number, which is a bit of a thing that they would give bereaved families. She's wearing that on her wrist. So the soldiers, they're now dead and buried into the ground.
Game over.
Done.
Good talk.
The end.
Good.
So why do we think it flopped? 20 minutes long is too short for a film.
No tension. So Jake needs to get himself armed. So he decides to go up to a local gun store, and the method that he uses to get weapons is great. This is not a major scene, but I did recreate it just because I like it so much. This is how he decides to arm himself up for the impending battle as he approaches Gus Trankus, the owner of the local gun store, as he's shutting up his shop.
Jake Pollard, RevCorps Security. Listen, I was wondering if you'd consider installing one of our systems. You know, crime rates in this area.
Yeah, don't waste your breath. You see that sticker? It means I got a Roscoe.
Ah, so you do. Oh, well. Thanks anyway, Mr.
Trankus. Gus Trankus.
Roscoe Security, emergency hotline.
Yeah, hi. This is Gus Trankus, Merritt Rod and Gun. Listen, this isn't really an emergency, but I'd like to check my system if that's okay.
What can we do for you, sir?
Well, if if I were to trigger the alarm myself, could you shut it off from there, please? Then call me back?
Sure, sir. Will do. Mr. Trankus?
Yeah, listen, works fine. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Dumb shit.
So, yes, he essentially gets the guy's name, calls up as him to the security company, breaks in, and then kind of acts it like he's triggering the alarm.
It's genius.
And gets in. I thought that was cool. I thought that was
Very cool.
And then, of course, ends it with the old dumb shit.
It's also very I don't know. I'm trying, but like action films. Then it wasn't always an action sequence to get a thing. Sometimes it was just cool. Like it was as much about cool as it was about action in those. Back then, you know? Like now it'd be like, to get the gun, you need to get through the whoopadoos, and it's like. Off to second unit town, and like that's so much cooler just doing what he just did, you know?
Yeah, it's great, and he just starts absolutely loading himself to the teeth with weapons from this gun.
Sort of like a loading up montagey.
It's like the movie Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just grabbing all kinds of
phase
stuff.
plasma rifle in a 41 range. Yeah, good.
We now cut to a classified military briefing. Major Stark and General Woodhurst, two of the shadowy figures that we met a few times. They're now reviewing disturbing film that documented some horrific experiments on Vietnam prisoners during the Vietnam War. And the footage reveals American soldiers executing and then reviving prisoners repeatedly. And as they watch, Woodhurst remains stoic, while Stark is visibly distressed with this. And the film ends with an American soldier calmly drinking water after having his arm amputated by a fellow soldier, just kind of calmly sipping. So essentially, whatever these experiments are, they seem to be able to revive people back from the dead.
Wow.
Which, as we established, unheard of before this.
No. And so I like it. I like the old sort of propaganda-y test footage. You can just imagine. How
It's in one of those. It's a dark room on one of those old
Yeah.
projectors.
Yeah.
It's the classic scene. You know, everyone's smoking in that room. So after this film, Woodhurst confirms with Stark that the evidence in this program must be destroyed, and that their existence and their secrets need to be safe. And Woodhurst is satisfied, believing that this dark chapter is now closed. It's taken care of.
He probably didn't need to watch it. Like he probably did. I think at exactly the point where there's going to be a lot of interest in this footage, probably just not mentioning it would have been the best thing.
Do you think it's that thing where they watch it and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, definitely we need to destroy this. This is crazy what we were doing.
This really gives it away.
Yeah.
It's really, oh man, and it looks like Stark's got a bit of a conscience on him. Oh, nuts.
So we're now going to transition, and we're now going to meet. We've met Jake Pollard. Yeah. We've met the Shadow Company. We're going to meet our two other characters that are very important to this, because we cut to a youth hangout called the Bowlarama.
Oh God!
And it's full of high school students enjoying their night.
There's not kids in this, is there, Cambo?
Teens. There's teens. Zach, is this where you're going to start becoming more critical now?
It's do you know when you mentioned the Lost Boys, I've only watched it once a very long time ago, but my feelings on the Lost Boys were, never has a movie been done a bigger disservice by its poster, because the poster is so cool. The film could never live up to it. I remember just being like, that is the coolest fucking poster in the world. And then the movie was just a bunch of teenagers running around while the guy from 24 was being a weirdo. And I'm like, oh, is this going to become that now? Is it just going to be fucking one of the Coreys just bowling? And...
I tell you what, they would have been good casting around this time.
Yeah.
So we meet Heather Stockton again. She, of course, was at her father's funeral earlier. And she spots a lone boy drinking from a flask. And this is Kyle Traeger. Now, the last name Traeger might sound familiar because, of course, Jake was looking for Sylvia Traeger. Yes. So this is her son. So she sees Kyle drinking alone at the Bowlarama, and she goes up to talk to him. I hope you guys are ready for some of the most, shall we say, cliche teenage dialogue you're about to hear. Good. Taking itself very seriously. This is when Heather walks over to Kyle.
Hi, Hi. Can I...
Sorry about your dad.
How's your mom doing?
Out of town till Christmas Eve. Got the palatial motorhome all to myself. Not that it matters. Guess you can take that MIA bracelet off now.
Yeah, guess so. Huh. Almost a relief. Now my mom knows it's really over. I think she always thought he would come back.
It isn't over. Not as long as you remember him.
What?
My mom says that. As long as you remember him, he's still alive.
Fuck it. I want him to be dead. Bastard screwed up my mom. Every day of her life, she's screwed up because of some guy I never met.
I never met mine either. Died in Hanoi, they said. Not like my mom keeps any pictures or anything. Keeps the damn Purple Heart buried in a drawer somewhere. But hey, you got a bracelet. I mean, at least they brought you a body. One time on the football field, I broke my collarbone. Split it in half. I'm lying there in the dirt. How come when you're in pain, it's the realest thing you've ever felt? Nothing else exists. But then when you're happy, you say, God, I can't believe it. I must be dreaming. I don't know. Maybe pain's the only real thing after all.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Just like old times. Why can't you just once lighten up? Talk about the weather. You're always dwelling on stuff. Why can't you just be like me and just forget about it?
I don't want to be like you. That's why we broke up, remember? I'm only good for a few laughs, but the minute I mention something serious, you're all, shit, be quiet. My cheerleader friends will hear you. Well, why don't you just go dancing? Your dad's dead. Great. Go out and dance. You can ignore stuff. I can't.
Yeah? Well, you're so fucking depressing all the time. I want to look at the future, okay, Kyle? I want to think about college and a career, and you're all, the world is shit, my old man died. I want to live in the past. All I wanted was for you to fucking laugh. That's all.
Did you laugh today? Huh? You got a good look at it. Did you laugh? Your old man never got old. I'm sorry I'm so fucking depressing.
Look, I can't do this. Why did I come over here anyway?
Yeah, why did you? Wait, tell you what. How about I'll go? Leave you to party with your sock friends.
Fine. Go be depressed about something.
Look. Fuck it. I'm sorry. Just... fuck it.
We always do this.
Just like old times. I still have those pictures of us on my sun visor. I'm going out to look at the weather.
Kyle, I didn't laugh today. I cried.
Right.
Light.
Thanks.
Cigarettes are gonna kill us, you know. Nice wheels. Charger?
67. Belonged to my dad. I keep it up.
No kidding. What's under the hood?
404 barrel, fully blown, Holly high-rise.
3 on the calm?
I ripped it out, put 4 on the floor. Have a look. Oh, check this out.
Very patriotic.
The best part is, I put in a compressed air tank. You're getting ready to drag, you flood the shocks, car sticks its ass in the air and scares the shit out of the competition. Pretty neat.
Too rich for my blood. Listen, maybe you can help me. I'm looking for work.
Yeah? What do you do?
Construction. You know of any building going on in town?
Well, there's a site over near... You know where Carlson Street is?
Yeah, I'll check it out. Thanks. Take care of yourself, son.
Okay, this is where the worlds are starting to collide. So Jake's in Merritt. He's clearly gone looking for Kyle. Are you guys aware of this is a really cool thing they do in films. It's called exposition. Where they very naturally put in a little bit of information you might need to know into some dialogue.
Well, did you realize that they used to date, those two teenagers?
Good.
Yeah. There's subtle exposition in that scene. His father also died in the war, it seems, in Hanoi, he said. And they do very heavily imply he may be depressed.
How many pages in, roughly, are we into the script when that scene happens?
Probably about 20 pages, 25.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot of, like, that's a lot of exposition. Like, that's a lot of character for 25 pages in, meeting the characters kind of like, like, where do they go from there? That's so funny.
Yeah, there's some clunky teenage dialogue there, for sure.
But also, you know that they would have just cut most of that. That's the funny thing about this as a project, is it's like, if they made the film, they would have shot it, then in the edit, they would have been like, I'll cut his whole monologue about crying.
Yeah. And that's what we always do try and point out to people, is what we can get our hands on are drafts, but not the final draft. Yeah. So the scene, it now cuts to a construction site on Carlson Street, and a loud boot heel smashes the padlock, and the door to the construction shack is kicked open, and a figure enters with a pen light. It's Pollard. Inside the shack, Pollard's flashlight reveals blueprints, tools, and other equipment. However, his attention is drawn to a particular corner where a bundle of dynamite sticks are stored. With urgency, he shoves the dynamite sticks into his backpack. He exits the construction site and walks briskly at night, whistling the Star-Spangled Banner as he passes a sign pointing towards the Westmoreland Veterans Cemetery.
Okay.
So he's loaded up with guns, he's loaded up with dynamite.
So he just did that just to get his hand on some dynamite?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay. So he's getting ready. He's really prepped.
Can I say as well, the car horn was Star-Spangled Banner. Yeah. He's now whistling Star-Spangled Banner. Nice. I do want you to recognize this is Chekhov's
Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, okay, good.
I wouldn't so specifically point it out were it not definitely going to come back later.
We love a good Chekhov's.
Zach, I'm so sorry, but this is where we get to our first spooky scene.
Oh no!
We cut to the Veterans Cemetery, and we see a uniformed night sentry armed with a Springfield M1A rifle that is watching over the cemetery. The night is misty. There's eerie shadows cast on the tombstones, and it begins to rain.
Oh, good.
And the sentry switches to his flashlight to navigate through the darkness. As the sentry cautiously moves forward, occasional lightning flashes reveal the rows of graves in the cemetery. And there's 6 freshly filled graves lined up in a row. They come into view. These graves are adorned with elaborate granite slabs and inscriptions, and one of them belongs to Captain Carl Stockton of the 101st Infantry Battalion. The sentry stands over the grave, his M1 rifle by his side, and he reads the inscription on the tombstone. But suddenly he hears a sound. Suddenly he notices something unusual. He squints and kneels down to investigate further. Intrigued, the sentry sets down his rifle, and we see the gleaming bayonet attached to it. He places his ear against the rain-soaked earth, listening intently.
Why are you doing that?
For a moment, there's silence, and the sentry hesitates, wondering if maybe he just imagined the sound. Suddenly he raises. He's frustrated with himself for being so silly and overly cautious, and he reaches down to pick up his rifle, when suddenly, out of nowhere, 2 long dead hands shoot up from the earth beneath him and grab his rifle. Terrified, the sentry bolts back up to his feet, gasping for breath, and he looks down in disbelief as the bayonet of his rifle plunges upwards, impaling him. The sentry screams, but those screams are silenced by the automatic gunfire that rips through his chest.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this truly is the Shane Black of horror. This is incredible.
Yes.
As the sentry struggles frantically, he's lifted into the air on the bayonet and twitches on the end of the machine gun, but he finally dies. In his final moments, he manages to unholster his sidearm and he fires 2 shots into the grave. From the soggy earth, a figure emerges, clutching the rifle. This figure's forearm bears a faded tattoo of a serpent wrapped around a dagger. In a long shot, we see 6 shadowy, naked figures raising from the mud. So the Shadow Company have now, you're not going to believe this, risen from the dead.
Far out.
But you're right, that's a very Shane Black death sequence.
Well, I was, everything leading up to it was very horror, and then to just go like, stab and shoot.
I love the idea of being impaled and then shooting from the impaled bayonet.
You know, like the head was so close. There was so much like opportunity for opening of Scream 2. There was like, and then he stood up. I'm like, are we gonna get like a Hostel style like ankle cut? But no, there was stab and shoot.
Yeah,
I love that.
This script is not short on a bit of the old stab and shoot. Let me tell you.
Great.
So the scene transitions to Heather's house at night. She's getting back from her night out, and we see her stepfather, Sheriff Buchler. He explains that he's got to go to the veteran cemetery because there's some vandalism or some disturbance happening up there. But he's keeping it a secret from his, Heather's mother. He doesn't want to upset her. Inside the house, we see Miss Stockton. She's dressed in mourning black, and she's watching an evangelist preacher on TV, and she is super religious. And we see religious stuff all over the house. And she kind of has a bit of a go at Heather for going out the night of her father's funeral. Back with Shadow Company. The soldiers are now armed and dressed, and they're seen raiding an ordnance storage facility. And they move stealthily through the darkened space, equipping themselves with weapon and ammunition. So they're now... This is their second montage of arming themselves up.
So, when they came out, were they buried naked, were they? I thought that...
It says naked in the script.
Buried in, like, military
in
finest.
Uniform?
Not so much naked dudes.
But that's less cool when they come out of the
Yeah, because I'm thinking like Terminator coming back from time. In the
yeah,
that's true.
That would have been a real like, someone would have said that to them, and they would have just been like, I think all of them. I think every single person on that creative team, maybe Walter Hill. I don't know enough about him. He might have been the one to raise it. Every other one would have been like, oh no, it's cooler that they're naked. Yeah. Like no explanation and no need to, because they all would have just been like, yeah.
So this is where we get our first action sequence now, because we're back at the cemetery and Pollard arrives to the scene only to find chaos as numerous police and military personnel are present at the cemetery. The open graves have caused a commotion and Pollard's plans appeared to be foiled, so he decides he's going to change course. He's going to head to the armory instead. He hijacks a police car while no one's looking and he attempts to escape. However, as soon as he pulls out, he's confronted by one of the undead soldiers standing in the middle of the road, McCall.
Oh, wow.
McCall opens fire on the police car. This leads to like an intense shootout where Pollard ends up crashing the car and it flips and overturns. And as he's trying to get out of the wreck yard, Pollard is stuck in the car. He's trying to get out. McCall relentlessly shoots at the car, approaching him. Pollard desperately tries to free himself from the mangled car and eventually manages to just grab a shotgun out of reach. Grabs it, swings it around, in a life of death struggle now, like face to face with McCall. He blasts him with the shotgun and he blasts a limb off and he blasts another limb and he essentially keeps blasting him until he is like a limbless shell on the ground. Pollard aims one last shot at him, pumping the shotgun for his last shot. As the dying words of McCall manage to croak out one last word, he says, "Medic!" As Pollard now blasts his head clean off.
Oh, wow. So it's very, again, it's very sort of, reminds me of, Sarah Connor when she has the shotgun and she's killing the T-1000 at the end of that and she did one and he's like just copying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that, yeah. He's blowing arms and legs and then eventually, after he croaks the word medic, he shoots his head off. However, Pollard's relief is short-lived because there's another member of Shadow Company, Perez. He emerges from the flames, armed and seemingly unstoppable. Perez opens fire on Pollard, but his own gun runs out of ammunition. And then in a surprising twist, instead of finishing Pollard off, Perez raises a peace sign, drops his weapon, and walks away into the mist.
What? Okay, so things went from 0 at the Bollarama to full-out bloody shootout very freaking quickly.
So, yeah, this is his first confrontation with Shadow Company, and one of the 6 is already down. He's taken out McCall. He took out McCall, blew his head off.
This movie is mental.
It's a good little shootout as well.
I was just thinking how good John Carpenter is for this film as well. Like, I keep running through his films. I was like, because I keep being like, He's so good at both horror and action, and like has been
Yeah.
since the very start of his career. This is the best.
It's such a perfect John Carpenter project.
Yeah.
So Pollard is wounded but alive. He watches as Perez leaves. He manages to weasel his way out of the last bit of the wreckage, grabs his backpack, and he limps away into the night, leaving the wreckage burning behind. We're now in Woodhurst's study. We hear Johnny Mathis singing Christmas tunes as the camera pans across a wall of different artifacts and awards from the Vietnam War. This is another argument between Needle Drop and dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee synth soundtrack. We see medals, photographs, an American flag rolled up on his wall, you know, the little triangle that people have. He's sipping brandy, reviewing classified files containing photos and information about Shadow Company. He's suddenly interrupted by Major Stark, who's demanding to know what's happening. He dismisses Stark's concerns, and he's casually throwing all the files into a fireplace as they're talking, just destroying the last of this evidence. In Stark, he confronts Woodhurst about what was going on here. What was these herbicides? There's all these suspicions around Agent Orange being used in the Vietnam War. And Woodhurst has a small little monologue. This is from the script. He says,
"You should rejoice, Garrett. Our boys have come home, and they've brought the war home for those who betrayed it. Don't you see, Major? It's Judgment Night."
Wow.
Judgment Night.
In a shocking turn of events, Woodhurst turns around, smiles, puts a gun in his mouth, and commits suicide, leaving Stark dumbfounded.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, he's like, I've done what I need to do, baby. I'm out. Blows his head off.
Oh.
This movie is insane.
Wow. Okay. That's a good little... Yeah.
That's a choice.
Yeah, and
That's a choice.
they've alluded
That is
to
a choice.
they've alluded to it being connected with Agent Orange somehow. This was like it came off the Agent Orange project, which was a pretty unethical form of warfare that they used in the Vietnam War.
Agent.
This is kind of connected to that
Just
somewhat.
a smidge. Unethical.
Just a smidge. So the scene now shifts to Kyle's trailer as we hear a crash outside. He walks gingerly to the door and opens it into the rain, when suddenly the battle and bruised Pollard steps up.
Sylvia Trigger. Jesus, man, what happened to you?
Where is she?
She's out of town. Who are you anyway? Are you following me around? I'm sorry. I'm shutting the door.
You're her son, aren't you? Look, is there gas in your car? You gotta get out of here.
Hey, what the fuck?
You have a tape recorder.
Look, dickwad, I don't know you from Adam. Now get out.
Listen, goddammit, you're in danger, Kyle. Understand?
How did you know my name?
I knew your father. During the war, he was the only one I could trust.
Pollard now sits on the couch, unloading his backpack. Kyle enters with a cassette recorder.
Sons of bitches must have found the power lines.
Jesus, why so many guns? You expecting an army?
Something like that. This is Lieutenant Jack Pollard, Special Forces, J71/76653. To the best of my recollection, it'd be as early as 65. Some people in Washington started to figure out Vietnam might have been a mistake. So a war hawk named Woodhurst, Colonel Philip L., he came up with a theory. That the problem wasn't Johnson sending our boys over there. The problem was them dying. April 1970, Woodhurst commissioned a team of scientists for a project so secret, so classified. Almost nobody in the Pentagon even knew it existed. 20 men. Assembled from 17 different special forces units. 2-year training program. Drugs. Weird hybrids of PCP and hormones. Hypnosis. Brainwashing. Building resistance to particular dioxides. Pushing endurance envelopes to teach the mind and body that weakness, conscience, are bad words. And if you take away a soldier's humanity, all that's left is a fight. Doesn't even matter who the enemy is. January 73.
That's when Nixon pulled us out of Vietnam.
except before the ink on the treaty was dry, intelligence gets a tip. NVA outpost above the Ho Chi Minh Trail that would become the undercover HQ for the big push to South Vietnam. So Woodhurst figures a suicide mission. Recon deep into Cambodia, find the stronghold, and pull the war out of a hat. Except the war's over, right? Wrong. Because Woodhurst has a trump card. Special unit. The only 7 men to survive his program. They made a blood pact. All got the same tattoo. They even have a credo. My will is strong. My name is Dread. I fear no death. Because I'm already dead. The unit was called Shadow Company. And Phase 1 was launched in February 73. Targetable staff officers sent behind enemy lines. Killed in their trucks by the VCs. Except Phase 1 had a codename. Trojan Horse Phase. Because the men were killed. But they weren't dead. They were in remission. Waiting. Waiting for the triggering mechanism that would resurrect them. And make them exactly what the war needed. Uncontrollable, untargetable, unkillable soldiers who would act without morals or questions. It was an even trade. Humanity for immortality. Like the Nazis all over again. Trying to make us Superman. Only this time. This time it worked.
What was the triggering mechanism?
Agent Orange. Chopper would fly over the area, spray the bodies. Except before they got to Phase 2, someone pulled the plug on the whole deal while the bodies were buried. They stayed buried too. Until tonight.
My dad was one of them? Is that what you're saying? And Heather Stockton's... You're full of shit, man.
Russ Traeger was the 7th member of Shadow Company. But he never went on the mission. Pulled out before he became one of them. He knew the war was over.
I'm not listening to this.
Kyle, your dad didn't die in the war. Woodhurst had him killed. Shut him up.
I thought they couldn't die.
Listen to me. Woodhurst's here, in Merritt. Now I'm going to find him. If I don't live past tonight, it's up to you to blow the whistle. You understand?
Yeah, right. Do it for my country, is that it?
No. Do it for your dad. You know how to use this?
No.
Learn.
Well, we have come to the end of part 1 of our cancelled movie report on John Carpenter's Shadow Company. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we would love it for you to subscribe, be it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. That really does help us get discovered in the charts. It would also be amazing if you could give us a 5-star rating, or most importantly of all, just tell a friend. We are completely independent here at Cancelled Movie Report, so your support really does mean the world to us. And if you want to support us even more than that, we do have a Patreon with some bonus content that you can subscribe to in the show notes. What do you think of the movie so far, and have we missed anything? We would love to hear from you. You can always get in touch with us via cancelledmovies@gmail.com or @cancelledmovies on all of the socials. And maybe there's a cancelled movie project you've always wanted to hear about. Why not let us know? You can fill out a form in the episode description alerting us to a project, and we may just give it the Cancelled Movie Report treatment. I thank you so much, Zach, for joining us here on part 1. Now, the undead are back to life, and they're about to attack the town of Merritt. Are you going to be brave enough to join us next week to hear what happens?
Nah, too spooked.
Well, that's unfortunate.
See you guys. No, absolutely. I have to find out now.
We would also be remiss not to mention our amazing voice cast, which included Erik Ruof was Jake Pollard, Danielle Santos was Heather, Zadeh was Kyle, with additional voices by Bill Sunderland and myself. I'm Michael Campbell. I have hosted and edited this episode, and Eden Porter was my co-host too.
Thank you very much for having me, Cambo.
And we both produced the show. Make sure you are listening next week to hear how it all ends. But if you can't wait, here's a little sneak peek.
Why can't they die?
Because their government wouldn't let them.
Oh my god. My father's here, isn't he? My father didn't die.
Trust me, your father died a long time ago.
But until then, take care.